If your family ever fed itself off its own ground, and you cannot tell a sweet watermelon from a bland one until the knife is already in it, sit down, neighbor. I need you to hear this. On a piece of Georgia bottomland outside Vidalia, in August of 1948, a grandfather named Ansel Pettit walked 20 rows of watermelons on his knees. He never carried a knife on the first pass. He carried a thumb, an index finger, and an ear he had trained since he was 7 years old. In one morning, he could read 40 melons off the vine and tell you which 4 to cut for Sunday dinner and which 36 were not yet worth the salt. He fed a family of 9 off that patch every summer of the Depression and every summer after. And he never once handed a grocer $8 for a melon that might come home bland. Today, most Americans standing in a produce aisle could not tell you if the melon in their cart is sweet or watery until they cut it open at home. But here's the twist. Ansel was not guessing. He was running a system. What Ansel ran has a name. It is the Frontier Picking Hand, a 6-part sensory read of tendril, ground spot, thump, gloss, webbing, and heft that told a man on his knees whether the melon under his thumb was sweet before he ever cut it. By the time we are done, you will be able to walk any patch or any produce bin and know, not guess, know which melon is sweet and which one is going to disappoint your kids at the table. That is the stake, friend. Not a hobby, not a party trick. A skill your great-grandfather owned by the time he was 10 that most grown men in this country have lost entirely. And there is one piece of it they worked hardest to make you forget. It is the piece that does the most work. We will build to it. By the time this is over, you will know every piece the way Ansel knew it. The order, the feel, and the one thing nobody teaches you in a grocery aisle. There are 6 pieces to reading a melon right. Most folks who try this botch it because they miss one, or worse, they run them in the wrong order. And the piece they buried hardest, the piece that turns a fussy little checklist into a system that actually feeds your family, is the one we build to last. None of this faded because it quit working. The commercial shipping trade and the supermarket chains behind them needed you standing in a produce aisle guessing, because a guessing customer buys twice. Before we go on, there's something coming for this country, and the news won't say a word about it till it's already on your doorstep. It comes down to one number, 3 days. That's what the stores hold for you. My grandfather Eli's pantry held a winter, and the difference was never money, it was knowing. I'm Silas Mercer, 7th generation on this ridge, and before Eli died, he made me swear that knowing wouldn't die with me. So I set it down, 904 pages of it in one book, silasmercer.shop, links below. All right, back to it. First piece is not a test at all, friend. It is knowing when to start testing. Your great-grandfather never picked a melon on a Wednesday because it was Wednesday. He picked it when the vine told him to. Ansel did not walk his patch every Tuesday. He walked it when the vines went quiet, when the sprawl stopped sprawling, when the new leaves came in smaller than the old ones, when the whole patch looked, in his words, tired. Traditional seeded watermelon varieties run roughly 80 to 100 days from planting to full maturity. That is the frame every extension bulletin still uses today. The old rule is you do not start serious reading until you are inside the last third of that window. For a 90-day variety, that is day 60 forward. Before then, every melon is a distraction. The calendar tells you when to start looking. The vine tells you when to start reading. Neither one tells you which melon to cut. The visual sign the patch is ready to be red is growth slowing visibly. The vine stops throwing new runners. New leaves that do appear come in smaller and paler than the summer canopy. The sprawl has stopped sprawling. That is what an old-timer meant by the vines looking tired. If you have a garden, mark planting date on the seed packet with a pencil, tape it to the fridge, and do not touch a melon until day 60 of that count. If you're in a grocery store this week, skip the whole system and jump to the next pieces. Calendar, vines, then the reed. In that order, every time. This system did not slip anybody's mind, friend. Somewhere in the middle of the 1950s, watermelon breeding turned. The Journal of Heredity ran a paper back in 1945 called Snowden's Method, a shipping quality test where you bend a strip of rind into a circle until it breaks. Not a sweetness test, a toughness test. That is the direction the whole trade went. Rind that could ride a truck 2,000 miles to a supermarket loading dock and still look pretty on a Tuesday. And after 1950, the cold chain grocery system pulled the harvest decision clean off the homestead and onto the packing house. Your great-grandfather picked for sweet. The packing shed picks for firm. Two different fruits, same name. University of Maryland Extension, in a 2025 Ripening Behaviors Bulletin, lists tendril withering, ground spot color shift, rind gloss change, and thump resonance as the 4 working maturity indices for watermelons. Every one of them is what Ansel Pettit did on his knees in 1948. The knowledge did not leave the record. It left the household. First patch I put in on my own after Eli died, I cut my biggest melon a week early because it looked ready. Sat down on the porch with my knife. It looked like a picture. Tasted like a wet cucumber. The old man would have laughed. Then he would have made me plant more seed. Size means nothing on its own. A watermelon can be full size 10 days before it is sweet. That is the frame. Everybody nods at it. The next piece is the one they oversimplified in every grocery store checklist you have ever read. And getting it wrong is why half the melons on your kitchen counter this summer are going to be pink water. Second piece is a little curly thing about the size of your pinky, and it is the closest thing a watermelon has to a mouth. Ansel is on his knees, one callous thumb and forefinger pinching a curl of green vine no thicker than fishing line. The tendril is a corkscrew, tight as a spring in June, brown and crisp as a matchstick in August. It grows at the node, right next to where the fruit stem meets the vine. Trace the vine from the root along the runner until you reach the fruit. Find the short stem holding the melon to the vine. Look at the node right above that stem, the little joint. There's a curly tendril there. That is the pigtail. Pinch it between thumb and forefinger. Green means the fruit is immature. It will be cool, moist, and spring back when bent. Walk away. Half brown means the fruit is closing in on ripe. It will still be pliable and feel leathery. You are 2 to 4 days out. Come back. Fully brown means the fruit is at or near peak sweetness. It will be shriveled, dry, and crisp. It snaps at the smallest bend with a tiny dry crack. Time to run the rest of the checks. The tendril and the fruit share plumbing at the same node. When the fruit stops taking up sap because it is full of sugar and done growing, the tendril dries out first. The tendril is a fuel gauge. Green, wait. Half brown, soon. crisp, cut. UC Davis post-harvest watermelon produce facts states harvest maturity is signaled by a wilted but not fully desiccated vine tendril proximal to the stem end attachment. University of Georgia Extension's 2025 watermelon fact sheet is even blunter. A brown, dried tendril near the melon indicates it is mature. The largest land grant systems in the country teach the pigtail today. Ansel Pettit ran it in 1948. Homesteaders ran it in 1848. Now, this is not a conspiracy, neighbor. It is just how markets work. The shipping trade and the grocery chains behind it do not need you knowing about a pigtail. If you could read a tendril, you would pick your own, and you would not pay them $8 for the guess. Nobody banned the pigtail in a courthouse. There was just no money in you learning it, and a great deal of money in you standing in the aisle wondering. They will sell you a melon stickered with a brand name and call that a guarantee of sweetness. Fine, believe that if you want. Or you can learn what a dried pigtail feels like between your thumb and forefinger, the way Eli did, and never guess again. And if there is a stickered melon in your cart already, friend, that is not on you. They spent 70 years teaching you the sticker was the reed. Next time you are at a farmer's market or roadside stand where the melon still has stem attached, ask the grower to leave 2 inches of stem on your fruit and show you the pigtail on it. Half of them will grin. The other half will learn something. That is the pigtail. In a grocery store, the pigtail has already been cut off before the melon ever hit the pallet. So the next piece is the one you can still run in the produce aisle. And it is the one the extension services will tell you outright is the single most reliable outdoor sign that a melon is sweet. Pattern break, friend. 2 pieces in. Everything you have heard so far, Ansel Pettit could have taught you in 10 minutes on his knees in 1948. What comes next is the piece a modern extension specialist named Justin Huckteman still teaches consumers today, because the shipping trade never quite managed to make it disappear. But they made sure most people do not know how to read it. Third piece is the belly of the melon, the patch where it sat on the earth and thought about being sweet. Ansel tilts the fruit with a flat hand, careful not to break the stem, and the underside comes into the light. Where the rest of the rind is dark green with darker stripes, the belly is pale, sometimes white, sometimes the color of good country cream. That patch has a name in every extension bulletin in the country, the field spot. Roll or tilt the melon gently so the underside faces you. If it is still on the vine, do not snap the stem. Tip it a few inches and look. White or pale green means too early. The fruit has not sat long enough. Walk away. Creamy yellow, buttery, or pale gold means ripe. Cut it. Deep orange yellow with sunken rind means past peak. Cut it today or lose it. Read the size of the spot, too. A larger, more distinct patch means the fruit sat on that same patch of ground longer, which means longer to accumulate sugars. Read the gloss of the spot with the tips of your fingers. A ripe field spot loses its slickness. It feels faintly chalky, faintly matte, next to the glossy green rind of the rest of the fruit. That is the tell your fingers give you that your eyes miss. University of Missouri Extension, in a 2025 release titled Sweeten the Fourth with Juicy Watermelon, quotes horticulture specialist Justin Huckteman. The bigger the spot, the better. A white or pale green field spot is a sign the watermelon was harvested too early. That is a modern land-grant specialist telling you verbatim what Ansel taught his grandsons. A large seeded watermelon in a mid-2020 summer grocery aisle runs roughly $7 to $9. Cut one open at home and find pale pink water inside, and you have paid full retail for a lesson. Read the field spot in the aisle before you buy, and that $8 stays in your pocket. A melon shaded under heavy foliage in a home patch may show a weaker field spot even when the fruit is internally ripe. Cross-check with pigtail. Some modern hybrids bred for uniform rind color show weaker field spots on purpose, a shipping cosmetics choice. On those varieties, the field spot lies. On any variety you cannot read confidently, fall back to the thump. You have been buying pale-bellied melons for years because a store put them at eye level. That is not ignorance, friend. That is the store betting on it. On your next grocery run, do not touch the top of any melon. Turn every melon on the display upside down and pick the yellowest, largest field spot in the bin. That single act this week kills your bland melon bill for the summer. Ground spot is the piece that survived. The next piece is the one most people know about, and 9 out of 10 of them run it wrong. Fourth piece is the one everybody has heard of, and almost nobody does right. Ansel plants his thumb flat on the top rind and his index finger pointing straight down at the field spot, bracing the fruit like a man holds a drum head, and thumps the belly with the knuckles of his other hand. Head bent, ear tilted, listening the way another man might listen for a distant train. That is the thumbnail image of the entire frontier practice. It did not come from nothing. Position the melon so the field spot is up or accessible. The belly gives the truest sound. Hand one is the brace hand. Thumb rests firm on the rind above where you are going to thump. Index finger points down at the exact patch you will strike. That thumb is not decoration. It reads vibration through the joint, the same way you can feel a bass note through a wood floor. Hand 2 is the thump hand. First 2 knuckles, curled, not flat fingers. Tap firmly once. Then again. Then move an inch and tap again. Immature fruit gives a tight, high, ringing sound. Frontier growers called it metallic, almost a plink. Your knuckles hit and the sound stays in your knuckles. Ripe fruit gives a low, dull, drum-like thud, hollow, resonant. The sound goes into the fruit and out through your thumb. Compare, do not isolate. Thump 3 or 4 melons in a row and the ripe one will announce itself against the others. A ripe melon on its own is hard to read. A ripe melon next to 2 immature ones is obvious. High is unripe. Deep is ripe. Compare always. University of Maryland Extension's 2025 harvest indexes list thumping and confirm ripe melons give a dull, hollow sound. USDA ARS summarized sensory trials place the right thump resonance in a rough acoustic band of about 100 to 130 hertz, a low frequency well below the metallic ring of immature fruit. Frontier growers on their knees in Georgia did not know a hertz from a hummingbird. They knew the sound. Eli wrote this down in 52. In the leather book on the shelf behind me, in his own hand. Thump for the drum, not the plank. If your thumb feels it, the melon has it. That is the whole test in one line. University of Missouri Extension flags the thump explicitly as the least trustworthy indicator on its own. Never run the thump as a standalone test. Run it after pigtail and ground spot as a confirmer. Hard surface under the fruit changes the sound. Lift the melon off the concrete display before you tap it, or thump one hand supported. They will tell you the thump does not really work, that it is grandfather superstition. Fine. Believe that if you want. Or you can hold 2 melons on a Sunday morning and feel a difference in your thumb your ears would miss, the way Eli did his whole life. This week, at the store or at a stand, thump 4 melons in a row before you buy one. Not 1, 4. The comparison is the whole test. That is the thump. Everybody knows it exists. Almost nobody runs it right. But there are still 2 pieces after this one, and one of them, the last one, is the one most people never even hear about. Pattern break. 4 pieces down, 2 to go. Now, none of what is left is complicated. The shipping trade never had to bury it in a courthouse. They just bred uniform rinds and shelf-bright melons and made these last 2 pieces harder to run. Not a band, neighbor, just a market with money on the other side. And the piece we build to is the one nobody teaches at all. 5th piece is the rind itself and what your thumb feels running across it. Ansel drags a broad thumb slowly down the length of the fruit, tracing the darker tan streaks that spider across the green rind, the webbing. On a ripe melon, those webs stand up faintly under the pad of the thumb. On an unripe one, they lie flat and slick. Look at overall gloss first. Hold the melon so light rakes across it. An immature fruit is glossy, a hard, reflective, waxy shine, like a car in the sun. A ripe fruit dulls. The rind goes matte, chalky, and reflects less light. Not by much, but enough for a trained eye. Webbing second. Look for the tan or brown spider web marks that run across the rind, especially near the ends of the fruit. On ripe melons, those webs darken, going from pale tan to a rich brown, and rise slightly so you can feel them with the thumb. Run the thumb slowly across 2 or 3 webbed streaks. On an immature fruit, the thumb slides right over. The rind is one smooth surface. On a ripe fruit, the thumb catches faintly, ridges. That catch is the tell. University of Arkansas System Division of Agriculture horticulturists in 2019 named the darkness of the webbing as a working visual cue for maturity, alongside thump and ground spot. Maryland Extension's 2025 bulletin lists rind gloss change as a maturity index for certain varieties. These are 2 land-grant systems still teaching what a homesteader read with his thumb. Not every variety webs. Modern hybrids bred for uniform clean rinds, especially seedless supermarket types, often have suppressed webbing on purpose. On smooth-rinded varieties, skip webbing entirely and rely on gloss dulling only. Dust and store handling can dull rind gloss cosmetically. Wipe the surface with your palm first, then read the shine. The seedless melon market, clean, pretty, uniform, is engineered around a supermarket display case, not a homestead patch. The webbing gets bred out for cosmetic reasons. You lose a whole sensory channel to a rounder-looking cart shelf. If the melon you brought home last summer looked like a photograph and tasted like a puddle, that was not your palate, neighbor. That was somebody's cosmetics choice. Pick 2 melons of similar size from the same bin, a webbed variety if you can find one, and compare the gloss and the ridge feel between them. The dull one wins. That leaves one more piece before the master read. It is the piece your hands already know how to run. You just do not know they know it. Sixth and final piece is the one your grandmother did without thinking about. Ansel lifts 2 melons of the same size, one in each hand, and just stands there, feet planted, wrist holding weight, his eyes half closed. He is not thinking, he is feeling. The heavier one is the fuller one. The fuller one is the sweeter one, and he sets the light one back on the ground. Choose 2 or 3 melons of similar size from the same patch or the same store bin. Same size comparison is the whole discipline. Different sizes tell you nothing. Lift each with both hands, fingers spread under the rind, and hold them for a beat. Feel the weight through your wrist. Do not weigh with your arms. Weigh with your wrist and forearms, where the small differences show up. Choose the one that feels heavy for its size. Density beats bulk. A dense melon is one that filled its rind completely with water and sugar. A light melon is hollow, either underripe or overripe with dried out flesh. Cross-check heft with ground spot. A heavy melon with a creamy yellow belly is the answer. A heavy melon with a white belly is a big, unripe melon. University of Georgia Extension's Towns and Union County blogs instruct readers to compare similar-sized melons and choose the heavier one as a maturity indicator. This is the same test a homesteader ran without ever hearing the word extension. A family that eats 5 to 10 watermelons across a single summer is looking at $40 to $80 off the summer grocery bill, but only if every melon on the counter is sweet. Run the picking hand right, and every one of them is. Run it wrong, and half of that money buys pink water. Comparing across different varieties will not work. A dense-fleshed seeded variety and a hollow-cored seedless one will not compare fairly by heft. Heft only within one variety. Soil moisture and recent rain changed density slightly on the vine. A melon in a wet week can feel a hair lighter than a fruit off the same patch in dry weather. I am not promising you a perfect melon every single time, friend. Weather, variety, and just plain bad luck can beat a good picker on any given morning. But run all 6 pieces and you will go from a coin flip at the store to being right 8 or 9 times out of 10. That is the difference between guessing and knowing. On your next grocery run, pick your top 2 candidates by field spot, then heft them side by side and take the heavier. That alone will change your summer. 6 pieces. That is the picking hand. And here is where most everybody who tries this still gets a bland melon on their kitchen counter, because they run the 6 pieces like a checklist. Ansel did not. Your great-grandfather did not. There is an order to it, and the order is the part they never bothered teaching you, because a grocery aisle cannot sell you an order. That is what we build to now. Back to Ansel Pettit for a moment. 20 rows on his knees. 40 melons in a morning. And out of 40, 4 he would cut for Sunday dinner. Now you know how he did it. He was not reading tendrils to check tendrils. He was not thumping to thump. Every piece he touched in a fixed order. And the moment a melon fell to piece, he stood up and moved to the next fruit. He never got to the knife until the melon had passed all 6. That was the discipline. Here is the buried piece. The picking hand is not a checklist. It is a sequence, and every piece is a gate. Tendril first, because if the pigtail is green, you stop and the other 5 do not matter. Ground spot second, because if the belly is white, you stop. Thump third, as a confirmer, never a starter. Gloss fourth. Webbing fifth. Heft last, only to choose between 2 melons that already passed. Skip the order and you are running 6 tests and averaging them like a schoolboy. Run the order and you are running 2 gates that kill 9 wrong melons in 10 seconds each. And the last 4 tests confirm the 4th in a row that reached them. Pigtail, belly, thump, gloss, web, heft. In that order, every time. That is why the shipping trade never had to ban a single piece of this system. They just had to keep the order off the aisle. Because a customer running 2 gates in a produce section does not need the store. And a store that does not get needed does not stay in business. This was never about a watermelon. It was about a man on his knees in August who trusted his own hands to feed his own family. It was about not being the grown adult standing in a produce aisle at 50 years old, hoping the sticker does not lie. 6 pieces, 1 order. Your thumb and your ear and the ground under a melon. That is the whole inheritance, and it is already yours. Somebody just did not get the chance to hand it down to you. And now somebody has. You do not have to plant a patch this summer to own this. Do one thing. This Saturday, at whatever store you shop, turn every melon in the bin belly up and read the field spot before anything else. Just that. Just the gate. That is your first step. Do it once, get it right, and you will never stand in front of that bin the same way again. Your great-grandfather ran this hand his whole life. Somebody just did not get the chance to pass it down to you. That is what I was here for. Tell me down below, did your granddad have his own reed? Did your grandmother lift 2 melons on her hip and just know? Different up in your part of the country. The old way that gets the most comments is the next one I go deep on. A skill your great-grandfather owned by 10 years old, almost gone in 1 generation. Now you are one of the ones who still runs it. Next time, the one summer crop your great-grandmother could put up in a jar for the whole winter without a fridge. And the year the canning companies made sure you forgot how. Keep the old ways. They kept